I've never said this publicly before, and honestly, the fact that I am scared to even make this video probably proves exactly why I need to make it. I have bipolar II disorder. I think one of the hardest things about having bipolar II disorder is that people only believe you are struggling when you are already falling apart publicly. Part of why I stayed quiet for so long is because once people know you are mentally ill, they can start seeing everything through that lens. Suddenly, your emotions become questionable, your boundaries becomes episodes, your hurt becomes overacting, your reactions becomes you spiraling. And honestly, that fear alone says a lot about how people still treat mental illness. Because when you handle things well, people think you are okay. People see you functioning, working, laughing, going outside, posting normally, and they assume that your illness just disappeared. But what they don't see is how much effort it takes just to regulate yourself every single day. And honestly, something I've been struggling to admit is that I'm angry. I'm angry that people treat mental illness like it's only valid when it looks dramatic. I'm angry that people acknowledge my bipolar disorder more as like a label or a PWD ID than an actual illness that affects my life daily. And I'm especially tired of people saying, like, I'm here for you, but when you finally open up, they disappear, or they become uncomfortable, or they give you empty advice just to calm the situation down. Just think positive, everyone goes through something, and sometimes those words doesn't help. Because support is not just saying I'm here. Support is emotional responsibility. Support is patience. Support is trying to understand that mentally ill people are not difficult on purpose. Sometimes I feel like people are more careful around someone who is physically sick than someone who is mentally ill. If someone had a physical condition, people would naturally adjust around them. They would try to be gentle. They would be caring. They would try to help. They would understand limitations. But when your illness is mental or invisible, people can be emotionally reckless and then blame your reaction afterwards. Then, suddenly, you are too much, you are too emotional, you are unstable, without acknowledging what pushed you there in the first place. And another thing that people don't talk about enough is how mental illness gets weaponized against you. Because yes, bipolar disorder is not an excuse to hurt people, but it is also not a weapon that people should use against you every time you express hurt, anger, boundaries, or emotion. Not every reaction is just your disorder. Not every boundary means you are unstable. And not every emotion is irrational. Sometimes, mentally ill people are genuinely hurt by something real. Sometimes, we are reacting to disrespect, abandonment, manipulation, overwhelm, or emotional exhaustion. But the painful part is that once people know you have mental illness, they can start using it to invalidate your reality. Suddenly, every emotion becomes unreasonable. Your hurt becomes an episode. Every reaction becomes you spiraling. And over time, you start questioning yourself too. You start wondering, oh, am I actually hurt or am I just mentally ill? Or am I overreacting? Am I allowed to feel this? That kind of self-doubt, it is exhausting. And honestly, I am tired. I am tired of feeling like I have to constantly regulate myself around people who don't even try to understand how hard bipolar II disorder actually is. Because yes, I do get overwhelmed. I do spiral sometimes. I do get anxiety. And even if I look okay, doesn't mean my brain is quiet. Bipolar II disorder isn't just about the mood swings. It's depressive episodes, It's emotional exhaustion. It is overstimulation, anxiety, racing thoughts, guilt, irritability, and trying to function while carrying all of that internally. And yes, I know my mental illness is my responsibility. I know that healing is still my responsibility. But I think people underestimate how exhausting it is to constantly carry yourself alone while still trying to stay soft, stay caring, and functional. Because my personality is, I'm a very caring person. It's not my bipolar. I care deeply. I feel things deeply. I absorb things fully. I attach fully. I think of other people even while I'm hurting. And sometimes I honestly wish I was a more nonchalant person. Maybe life would feel easier. Because the combination of sensitivity and bipolar disorder, it can feel brutal Because I am both emotionally perceptive and emotionally intense. But I am not nonchalant. And that's why mental illness can feel so lonely sometimes because people support the aesthetic of mental health awareness more than the reality of it. Reality is uncomfortable. The reality is messy. The reality is needing reassurance multiple times. The reality is becoming overwhelmed, and the reality is trying your best not to spiral while still functioning normally outside. So, for Mental Health Awareness Month, I think we should talk about this too. Not just awareness, not just checking on your friends, but learning how to actually hold space for people when their pain becomes inconvenient, repetitive, emotional, or hard to understand. And maybe, as mentally ill people, we also need to start giving ourselves permission. Permission to be affected, because not everything that hurt us is our disorder. It's not just our disorder. Sometimes people genuinely hurt us, and we are allowed to acknowledge that pain instead of immediately blaming ourselves for feeling it. Permission to have limits, because constantly forcing ourselves to be understanding, patient, calm, and emotionally available for everyone else while we are already struggling internally is very, very exhausting. Permission to need gentleness, not because we are weak, not because we want people to walk on eggshells around us, but because living with mental illness is already heavy enough, and softness can sometimes be the difference between coping and spiraling. And maybe, most importantly, permission to stop minimizing how hard our disorder actually is. Because many of us became so high functioning that even we started invalidating ourselves. We gaslight ourselves into thinking, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I should handle this better, maybe I'm just difficult. When in reality, we have been surviving something so exhausting for years. And I think a lot of mentally ill people learn to make themselves smaller, quieter, easier to handle, easier to love. Because we are so afraid of becoming too much for other people. But struggling does not make you too much. Needing support does not make you too much. Taking up emotional space does not make you too much. So if you are someone with bipolar disorder, anxiety, depression, or anything invisible, and you feel tired of constantly trying your best to stay regulated, to stay soft, to stay alive, and keep functioning, and trying to hold yourself together quietly, I hope you know your effort counts. Even if nobody sees it, even if people minimize it, even if you are tired, you are not weak for struggling, and you are not alone in feeling this way.